It's tea because the beginning of this book is going to piss you off. Hi guys, it's me, Moo. So I am going to do a review on Dragon's Bait by Vivian Vande Velde. And this was actually my first read of the year because I've had this book on my bookshelf since 2018, and the only reason why I bought it was because nostalgia. You see, 12-year-old Moo was absolutely in love with this book, and she would read it over and over again, and it had been years since I've read it. So I was like, let's see if this book still holds up to how I feel about it this day and age, since 12-year-old Moo is not the same person as adult Moo. So the book is basically about a young woman, about 15 years old. Her name is Alice. She is a tinsmith. Now, a tinsmith is like a blacksmith in her little village, like tiny ass village where everybody knows everybody, right? There are only a few trigger warnings in this book, which is just murder and death. And if you don't like men grabbing young girls in an aggressive manner, there's that. As I was saying, so the story starts out with Alice, a tinsmith that works under her father. Her father is very, very sick because a sickness had passed through her village, killing a lot of people, making a lot of people sick. So one day, while she's working with her father in their shop, her next door neighbor, Gower, he is a total catch you next Tuesday. I hate this character. Anyways, he comes in with a churchman named Atheron. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't really fucking care because I hate this character. Now, Atheron was called there by Gower because Gower accuses Alice of witchcraft. And not only him, but his disgusting wife, Una, and their stupid daughter, Etta. Now, and the reason Gower accuses poor Alice of witchcraft is because he has been wanting Alice and her father's shop next door for the longest time. Like, he tells the father, Alice's father, I will pay you for this, and the father's like, no, the shop has been in my family for years, no thank you. So this bitch decides to go to the town over and be like, hey, I know a girl that is doing witchcraft. Like, what the fuck, right? So poor Alice is accused of witchcraft. They go into I guess they're still in the shop. I can't remember because this part made me so angry because no matter how much she tried to defend herself, people would talk over her, people would bully her. No matter how much of people that she grew up with was like, no, this is wrong, they would be bullied. Like, if people stood up and said, hey, this is Alice. We know Alice. We've known her for 15 years. I mean, our town is so fucking small. We've seen this girl growing up. Other people that went on the side of Gower, those sheep, was like, oh, shut up, shut this down, right? It was just bullshit. So then she is guilty. Atheron's like, oh, too bad, you're guilty. We're gonna stake you on the top of the hill for the dragon that has been terrorizing our village. Now, the thing about this book that I absolutely love is that it hints to fae and dragons and witches. There are hints. People talk about it, but they don't really go into detail about it. And I was like, no, I need to know more. Anyways, so as soon as Atheron's like, oh, guilty, the poor dad, the dad is so sick to the point where he has a heart attack. This man has a heart attack, falls down on the ground, and people are just staring at him. And poor Alice is like, no, father. And she runs to try to hug him, but her hands have been chained the back of her to her back. So Atheron grabs her and he looks down at the dead dad and is like, we'll leave him here, and when we come back, we'll bury him. And they were gone for hours. So they left that poor man's body where it was for hours. Like, what the fuck? You're a church man. Well, it's not surprising. I mean, so she is tied up to the stake, right? They didn't tie it right because they were terrified. So she gets loose and she's doing a woe is me, right? A woe is me. I am so sad. My poor father. And it, it's valid. Her feelings are so valid because this just happened within hours of each other. She was accused of witchcraft. Her father died. So she manages to get loose and she's like, well, I can't go back to town. I can't do anything. I just want to die because of my father. So she sees the dragon. The dragon's not that big. So she throws a rock at the dragon because she's like, hey, I'd rather it kill me because I have nobody that is on my side right now. Nobody at all. And somebody in the other city, I think it was called Griswold, probably already knows about me. So there's no point going. So she throws she throws the stone at the dragon and she's like, "Come and eat me, you son of a bitch." And the dragon lands. And he's just staring at her. She's like, "This is it. This is it." So he moves towards her and she's like, "Oh my god." So when she does this, she feels hands grab her and pull her hands away from her face. And a boy is standing there. A boy that looks about 17. So the dragon transformed into a human named Cylindrel. So he basically asks her what's going on, and then she tells him, "Hey, I was staked here, just kill me, blah blah." So he's like, "You're still alive. What do you want to do?" And she basically says, "I want revenge. I want to burn the entire city, the entire town to the ground up to the last baby." So Cylindrel is looking down at her and he's kind of smiling like, "Ooh, okay, right?" And without a word, he transforms back into his dragon form, picks her up, and takes her somewhere. Now the thing with Cylindrel is that he mentions that only golden dragons, because he was a golden dragon when he saw her, have magic. And that kind of opened the doors to all of the other like fae and the history of magic, but we rarely actually get that, which really really sucks. Now the thing about Cylindrel is that I'm gonna go on a rant about him real quick, is that there are times where he's really funny and really like sweet, and then at the barn he learned everything about her. Like he's like, "Tell me everything," and she did. She opened up and she was, "Yeah, this is what happened, this is what's going on." And then he didn't say anything and he's like, "I'm gonna go to sleep." And then she kind of got a little bit annoying because she was asking him questions after question after question, to the point where he finally was, he kind of snapped at her. He grabbed her and he shook her and he yelled in her face. And it was kind of like, whoa, what is this? Just a few minutes ago, you were giggling and like you were like cool with her, but then I guess because she made a comment, hold on, let me grab that. So the scene is that he is trying to go to sleep and he transformed into a dragon to protect himself while sleeping. So I'm going to read to you what exactly happens, because it was just a total 180. "Alice opened her mouth and closed it as things became clearer. You can't talk when you're not in human form, can you?" she sighed. "You should have said so before." The dragon jumped to his feet, transforming so quickly that he lunged and grabbed her left arm before she realized it was his hand and not a claw that held her. "Of course I can talk when I'm not in human form." His fingers dug into her arm. "I can talk the languages of whatever beast I'm in the shape of. When I'm a horse, I talk horse. When I'm a hawk, I talk hawk. When I'm a human, I talk human." Wincing from the pain and intensity, Alice objected. "Humans aren't beasts." "They are to dragons," he shouted, "and only a human would be arrogant enough to argue about it." I was like, what the fuck? That was like a 180, like completely out of it. But then at the same time, Alice, as a reader, Alice was annoying me, asking him questions. Like, if I was trying to go to sleep and somebody's talking to me, I get upset. I snap back because you see me trying to go to sleep and your bitch ass mouth is not shutting up. So anyways, they're in Griswold, planting the seeds of doubt and suspicion in the town folk of Griswold, of Atheron, right? So there is a point where Alice wakes up and she can't find Cylindrel. So she's like, I should go do my plan. So she ends up finding out where he lives. And she ends up lying to him saying, "Hey, we need you to go to this town across, you need to take the docks. You need to go across the sea because there's this man that is possessed and this and this and this." And he's like, "No," after the, he's like, "I don't want to." And she's like, "Come on, this is really important." And he's like, "Fine," after the vigil. It was a vigil. After the vigil service, because it's like some special day in their town that does a vigil for a certain saint. And she's like, "Okay, cool." So she goes back and she goes back to where they're staying and she ends up seeing Cylindrel. And there's a part of her that's like, "Oh my god, Cylindrel, he's actually kind of cute." And I was like, girl, you need to get your revenge. Get your revenge first, and then think about, settling down. There was this one part that I forgot to mention, like when she's leaving Atheron's place after she does her first initial part of the plan, she crashes into a witch. Now, her and Cylindrel were informed by soldiers about a witch that is trying to sneak into town to take the soul so she can live forever. And the thing is, she crashes into this witch, right? And the witch is like, she knows so much about Alice, and she's talking about Alice, and she's like, "Trade with me, give me your soul, and I'll make all this trouble go away." And Alice is like, "No thank you, no thank you." So she ends up running away, but she doesn't tell Cylindrel, which is really weird, I guess, because of all the excitement of her plan coming, she completely forgot. Now, this was one of my favorite parts of the book, was that Atheron, I think that's his name, I don't care, finally got his, right? Cylindril and Alice had the plan of putting stolen items from different churches, like that are made with silver, that are made with gold, that have gems and all that, in his house. And Cylindril was taking things from his hoard and using it to help Alice, which is crazy because, you know, dragons and their hoards. So it's kind of insinuated that Cylindril actually likes her that much to help her with revenge. So anyway, so Cylindril ends up transforming into a crow and sneaking into his house, and Alice is throwing a bag full of like stolen gold and goods and hiding it within, and Cylindril's gonna hide it within his house, right? And then Alice is on the outside, so she has to put gold coins and the stolen candlesticks because Cylindril told the city folk that from one of the churches they were from, someone stole silver candlesticks. So he found those silver candlesticks and he put it inside. And Cylindril did not tell her that he stole the chalice that was part of the vigil. He stole it and he put it in Atheron's house, and he did not tell her that. So she was really surprised. A group of people from the vigil was like, hey, yeah, the chalice is missing. And then Cylindril's like, oh no, we should talk to the Atheron. We should talk to him because isn't he in charge of it? Let's see what he could do. We could pay him. And the townsfolk's like, yeah, let's go. So when they get there, Atheron is arguing with the father of the church. And he's like, I have to go. And then Cylindril's like starting trouble from the crowd. Why are you leaving so soon? Something's missing. This is suspicious, you know? And when he tries to leave, Alice had made holes in his saddlebag, so every time the horse moved, gold coins would come out. So Cylindril's like, hey, your gold coin fell out. And Atheron's like, no, that's not mine. And he's like, are you sure? So every time, and the horse knew that Cylindril was a dragon or something mystical because it was scared of him, so kept like moving away from him, and every time it moved, like coins would fall out. Finally, I guess the saddlebag broke and everything fell out, and they're like, oh my god. And then the father was like, oh dear, oh my, oh dear. And he literally, that was what was written in the book. And then he's like, we have to check your house. So people started checking Atheron's house, and they were like, oh my god, he has a chest full of stolen items. And then Cylindril and Alice like, let's get out of here. You got your revenge, let's get out of here. So Cylindril ends up transforming into dragon and taking her away from there and dropping her like close to where she's originally from. I think it's called St. Toby, because she's ready to do her revenge on Gower. And it was kind of weird because she talks about Cylindril and she talks about liking him, like a possibility of liking him, but I didn't see any evidence of her actually saying, hey, you know, he's actually a good guy, I actually like him. I didn't see any evidence in that, but I was like, whatever, she's 15. So their plan is, with Gower, is that Cylindril ends up going to Gower's house in the middle of the night and meeting Yuna. And Yuna likes to flirt with like a lot of really handsome people. So she ends up taking him to her house. Yuna is Gower's wife. And Gower was like, no, I'm not going to give you a wheel, blah, blah, blah. And they started arguing, and Gower gave him a wheel. So then Cylindril comes back to Alice, and he's like, okay, this is the plan. We're going to make the wheel look like it broke. You're going to be injured, and they're going to stay with you because it has to be forced. And I'm going to make it where we'll have Yuna fall in love with me, and then we'll start all of this stuff. What do you want? What do you want to do? So she's like, yes, I want Gower to pay for what he's done for my father and me. I want Edda, because the daughter was really like, when Alice was being accused of being a witch, Edda was like, let's burn her to the stake. Like, she was really excited about poor Alice being, you know, killed. So Alice wanted her to feel the same thing about her. She wanted Edda to be accused of witchcraft and have the same emotions of being alone and nobody believing her. And then she wanted Yuna, Cylindril, make Yuna fall in love with her, Yuna leave Gower, run off to the city with Cylindril leave her and be like, haha, deuces, bitch. And then Yuna would be so embarrassed and not to come back. So that was the plan. It was a great plan. So they did the first part of the plan. They pretended the wheel broke, And because Gower's always like boasting about how great his wheels are and there's never a problem with it, in the middle of the night, Cylindril and Alice is like covered in like bloodied bandages, and she has no idea where he got this blood. But she's covered in bloody bandages to the point where she can't talk because her jaw's supposed to be broken. And Cylindril's pounding on the door, and he's like, "Open up, open up! You sold me you sold me a wheel, effective wheel or something like that." And then people being nosy, the neighbors started opening the door and listening, and he's like screaming and yelling, and Gower's like, shh, quiet, just get inside, get inside. So they do, and he's like, "You're gonna take care of my brother. I gotta go do something because of you, blah, blah, blah." Alice ends up staying in their house for a few days, and then slowly people started talking about Gower, and the plan was going great. And then Cylindril comes back, and before Cylindril left Alice, or Jacko, his brother, with Gower and his family, he took Yuna's hand and kissed it, and she was looking after him all longingly. And then Alice is like, "Yep, part of the plan, part of the plan." So then later that night, Cylindril comes back, and he's like, "I'm gonna take my brother for a walk, or go to the doctor or something." I forgot what it was. So they're like in the corner talking and eating and talking about the plan and how it's going according to plan. And then this man with an eye patch comes out of nowhere. He's like, "Oh, buy these bracelets, buy these bracelets." And Alice has this weird feeling about this guy, and she's like, no, it's okay. And he's like, "Oh, try it. And because Alice is such a pushover or a hero, she ends up saying fine. And then it turns out that it's actually Atheron. He ended up putting iron shackles on Cylindril, insinuating that Cylindril is not a dragon but a fae. What? And we never actually get that side of the story from Cylindril. Never. It's just, okay, iron shackles on a fae, he's dying, he's fae. And I would have really liked it if there was like a scene where Cylindril actually did tell her, "Hey, yeah, I'm actually fae, this is what happened." You know, a little about his backstory, because I love backstories from characters, but we rarely get that from Cylindril, and I'm like, ugh. And we find out that Alice figured out the only way that Atheron escaped the mob was to give his soul to the witch. So the witch came back, right? And at first I was like, what does this witch have to do with the story? But it's kind of cool because later she becomes a symbol to Alice. So Atheron is gonna drag them back to Griswold and have both of them admit that they were wrong, or have Alice admit that she had set him up, and he didn't care about Cylindril because he knew what Cylindril was, so he was gonna leave him to die. But then Alice is like, please don't, let's not do this. And then he ends up taking her and Cylindril back up to the hill where she was first initially staked. And he was gonna leave Cylindril there to die. But somehow they managed to fight, and somehow Cylindril managed to get enough energy to wrap the chains around Atheron's neck and choke him. And Alice is like, "No, stop, this isn't right, stop. I know he's doing bad, but stop." And I'm like, fucking hero, shut up and let Cylindril kill him. And he does, just snaps his neck. And I'm like, fucking finally, because that guy did not deserve redemption at all. So after he's dead, we find out that the iron had been slowly poisoning Cylindril. And at this point, he's not going to survive past dawn, because Atheron, like, force them to walk throughout the entire night or something like that. So she's like, stay here, I'll get your help, I'll get you help. He's like, you're not gonna make it to St. Toby, just let me die. And she's like, no. And she kisses him like a soft peck, and she's like, I'll be back, I promise. And I'm like, Cylindril, no. So she ends up running back, going into her father's old shop, and she sees how Gower had moved a lot of his stuff into her old shop. And she's like, this son of a bitch. So then Gower ends up catching her. He's like, you're alive. I should have known. And she's like, oh, is the town folks talking about you and your wife and your daughter now? And he's like, yes, they are. And she's like, well, you're going to help me. And he's like, well, I'm not going to fucking help you unless you do this and do this and do this. And because she's so in love with Cylindril and she wants to save him, she agrees to his terms. And I'm like, baby, no. Stab the old bastard, grab something and run. But because she's such a hero in the hero's journey, of course she agrees to his fucking terms. Of course. Fucking Gower. So the entire time she's trying to go to Cylindril, this guy is stopping her. This guy is asking so many questions. This fucker thinks he has control over the situation. And I'm just like, this bitch. This fucking bitch. And I'm thinking, please, Cylindril, kill this guy. Kill this man. Please. So they finally get to Selendril, and he's sawing away with the iron, and Selendril's about to die, and at one point Gower's like, fuck this, and he stops. And she's like, what? Alice has to finish sawing. A 15-year-old has to finish sawing because some old man didn't want to do it anymore. The fuck? So Selendril ends up surviving, and he ends up leaving. He ends up transforming into dragon and flying away because, you know, he doesn't trust Gower. And I'm just like, okay. And Alice is like, because Alice had told Selendril before that she had made a deal with Gower and that she will accept the terms and she will accept the consequences of this deal. And Selendril's like looking at Gower and looking at her like, bitch, the fuck, right? So then, because she accepted Gower's terms, she returns back to St. Toby to say everything was true, that she was a witch and everything she's done was because of revenge. And that scene made me so mad. I was so pissed. And then there were people that knew her while growing up was like, Alice, this is not like you. Are you sure? And then even Alice was like, too late to say this now. Why didn't you say that when they first accused me of being a witch? Right? These fake ass bitches. I fucking swear. Fake ass bitches. So then the town decides to stake her and put her on fire. So while they're gonna put her on fire and all that, Selendril comes. He comes and rescues her. He ends up chasing after the humans, which is hilarious. So chasing the humans, basically showing, hey, I'm a dragon. You can't escape from me. He ends up singeing Gower's eyebrows, and Alice, because Alice didn't like how when Altheron was killed, she didn't like that revenge, and she felt gross, and she felt like she was just like him because, you know, she's a fucking hero. I'm not. I'm a petty bitch. I would have been like, yeah, he's fucking dead. Let's go after Gower, and you could burn him to a crisp. So Selendril grabs her around the waist, lifts her up as a dragon, and he ends up burning down her house and the tin shop that she grew up and had so many memories. And I kind of like that idea that Selendril did that because it basically showed Gower that he is burning down something that he gained through lies and hurting people. Like somebody died because of his lies. And now that if he wants that land, he's gonna have to work from the bottom up to get it. And also, Alice had planted the seeds of doubt and suspicions in their mind, so the city's not gonna even trust Gower anymore. So that is what you call justice. So then they manage to land far away, and they kind of have a heart-to-heart about her not liking the revenge, and she talks about how it felt icky, and she's kind of glad that Gower didn't die, and that she kind of knew where she was heading, because while she was being staked, she saw the witch. I read it was the witch kind of symbolized a path that if Alice went down on taking her revenge, she would be just like the witch, trying to find her soul and trying to take souls from people. And the witch was there because she knew Alice was going to die, and she's like, hey, I have a free soul, because she's dying because of her revenge, you know. And that's the last we see of the witch, honestly. And it was kind of like a symbol to Alice, like, hey, if I went down that path, that would have been me. So as they have this heart-to-heart, Selendril's like, well, where are you going now? What are you gonna do? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, maybe you could stay with me. And then I was like, oh my god, he likes her, how cute. But it also falls into that trope that I don't really like, where it's like the immortal older creature falling in love with a 15-year-old, and I'm like, little Moo loved that, but adult Moo's like, sir, that is a child. What I really do like about the story is that Alice is the hero in the hero's journey. And her not killing Gower and her not really liking revenge showed a maturity and emotional strength that kind of proved to her that she didn't have to be like them to get her revenge. What I really would have liked is that more information about the Fae and the witches and the magic and the dragons, because there were hints, people would talk about them, but we wouldn't get any hard evidence or hard facts about that. And I would really liked it because when they were spoken about, it really opened the doors to this type of world. Now, this is an easy read. This book does say ages 12 and up right here. It's not flowery at all, but the way this world is kind of like a medieval fantasy. And what I loved about the characters is that a lot of them didn't have descriptions. Sandriel was the only one that had descriptions, basically talking about how he was really fair and he had lavender eyes and his hair was really golden because he was a dragon. But you never get a description on Alice. You really don't know how she looks. And then they would mention names and hair color, but that's it. Other than that, the writing, the pacing was really... There was times where I'm like, I didn't really highlight or put a tab because it was basically talking about boring things, which is basically Atheron and all that kind of stuff, where how Alice couldn't really understand why a dragon would want to help her, and she wondered what he wanted in return, which was never brought up. Like I said, was never brought up. It just turns out that he probably just liked her because she threw a rock at him and she stood up to him. That's why. Young Moo had no idea what enemies to lovers was, because my definition of enemies to lovers is completely different from 12-year-old Moo. So there's that. Yeah, so this book was an easy read. It's only 196 pages. If you are looking for a book with revenge and you wanted the revenge to be bloody and satisfying, because I'm a petty bitch and I wanted Gower to die and his family to go through the same thing she did, but didn't, this isn't really for you. Like I said, the only trigger warnings is murder and death and the occasional older man grabbing the younger woman and coming into her space. So if I was to give this book a rating, it would be 4 out of 5 stars. 4 out of 5 because I'm a petty bitch. Wanted the bad guys to get theirs. I mean, one was killed, so that's good. So that's why it's a 4 out of 5. But I really wanted Gower and that whole entire city just to be burned to the ground. But because Alice is a hero in the hero's journey, she couldn't have that happen. So this is Dragon's Bait by Vivian Vande Velde. It was published in 1992. I absolutely adore it. I'll see you guys later.